Hey, you guys can applaud. Applaud for Ed. And his granddaughter, Kristin, put that together. My name's Jack Beckman, and I want to thank the Pink family for giving me an opportunity to stand in front of you guys and help honor one of our friends, family, colleagues, however Ed fit into your life. This is truly an absolute honor to me. When I started going to the drag races at 7 years old at Orange County International Raceway, everybody that got out of one of these cars or was spinning wrenches on the side of these cars was 8 feet tall. Literally and metaphorically. As a small kid, you're so impressionable. And to find out, if you're a baseball fan, that Mickey Mantle was a great person, truly would help that inspiration go a lot further. And the fact of being in a sport where so many people have accomplished great things, and so many of them are great people, to get a chance to rub shoulders with giants, really humbling. Sylvia, 49 years. I told her one more year she would have got half of everything. 49 years with the man, though. Well played, my dear. I had no clue we were going to pack the place like this, but I guess I should have known because we're talking about the old master. And whenever I'm going to do one of these events, my go-to guy's always been Bob Fry. I think Bob is just a brilliant person. He's a warm person. He does a lot of different events. He's perhaps the greatest MC I've ever listened to. And I enjoy doing events like this with a little asterisk because you want to do a great job. And I think that if you can find some characteristics in somebody you admire and emulate those, you do a pretty decent job. And I think Ed set a standard for so many people in this industry. But I reached out to Bob. I said, give me some Ed Pinkisms. Let me know some of the things that would resonate in this crowd. And one of the things that he said to me is he said, if you look at the list of Ed's friends, it would be the guidebook in the who's who of the history of motorsports. And you don't really need to look any further than over both your shoulders to see the people that are in here. And I would love to shout out some of the names here, but I am so afraid I would be remiss and miss a few of you guys here. It's so inspiring. And these celebrations of life, I think, are an opportunity for the work side of somebody, us racers, to learn something about the man Ed from the family. And for the relatives to learn something about Ed from the racers here. And in some cases, Sylvia, I know you spent a lot of time around the industry, probably sick of racers by this point, but if you look around here, Ed was in good standing. There's a lot of folks that came here because Ed meant something to them more than just another figure at the races. It touched them in a way that influenced them and put their lives on a better trajectory. There's also a lot of gray hair and hearing aids in this room. And it is awesome to be amongst this crowd here. So to kick this off, I'd like to have Sylvia come up and say some things about the man she spent half a century with. I'm sorry, did I say Sylvia? Well, okay. Well, I told you 3 mistakes and you don't have to pay me, so that's one right there. Hey, Nancy, what if we start with you? You say some words to the folks about your pops there. So Nancy, I'd like you to tell the crowd the entire family, and I don't know if we've had the latest of the great-grands. You'll have to let them know, but kind of give an idea of the legacy that your father left behind for folks.
I didn't know I was going to have to answer a question.
There's no pressure.
Oh, I can't go through the legacy that he left. I would be up here and you would be bored with me after an hour.
The grandkids, the great-grandkids.
Okay. Well, I have my daughter, Kristin, and her husband, Tyson, and their children, Kinley and Decker, who's running around here somewhere or sitting with someone.
There's a $50 reward if anybody sees Decker and turns him in, by the way. Okay, we found him back there.
And then we have my brother, Bill, who is not here today. His daughter is about to have his second grandbaby any moment. So she'll be born hopefully sometime today or tomorrow or the next day. We're excited about her. And then she's married to Danny, and they have Eloise, and of course the new one that's coming. And then we have Zach, my brother's son, Zach. And here comes Decker. And they all live in North Carolina, so it was a long way for them to come, and with the new baby coming, it was a little hard for them to get here.
Also, if anybody gives sugar to Decker, security will be seeing you after the event here, so please don't.
No, you want to stand up here with me, baby? Okay. Oh, you want me to pick you up? Oh, you're kind of heavy.
How about this, Decker? Come here. I'll hold you up. I promise I won't drop you. All right, is that a better angle?
Is that good? Okay. Do you want to say something?
This is gay ABCs.
So we were going to have subtitles here, but I'm not even sure what language that is, Decker. Oh, the ABC
ABCs.
language.
All right. Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for all coming. I know a lot of you gave up your weekend. A lot of you rearranged your plans. Some of you flew halfway across the country to be here, and my family and I really appreciate it. As I look at everyone around here, I know there are a lot of amazing stories and great memories, and we've been hearing a lot of them over the past few months, and even more today. I mean, the stories are just ongoing from the 40s on, just wonderful. The few things that I hear from everyone is what a gentleman he was, what a gentle soul, and that they're a better person for having known him. And if he had known that that's the way everyone was going to remember him, he would be so humbled by all of the comments. He definitely had a life well lived. Probably the two most influential people in my dad's life were Lou Center and Lou Baney. And they go back to the 40s. And we are still friends with both of their families, and they are all here today. And that is just a testament to the friendships that were made through racing. It wasn't just business. And so we're just so grateful for each and every one of you that are here today, and we just thank you so much for coming, and God bless you all. Mwah.
I'd like to call you up, but it's long before.
All right, my daughter Kristin had a great relationship with my father. She called him Grampy. She named him Grampy, so all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren call him Grampy. Hey, you want to come with me?
You all know him as the old master, Ed, Eddie, maybe even Edster. But to me, he was always just Grampy. Growing up around Ed Pink racing engines, I had a front row seat to the legacy that he built. But my favorite memories, they aren't about the engines. They're about the time that we spent together. My grandparents always went out of their way to be a big part of my life, and I did the same for them. I'm the first grandchild, and since I have the microphone, I'm going to say that I am the favorite. From the very beginning, my grandparents were at everything. Birthday parties, school events, holidays. The kind of presence they had in my life was rare, and it created a bond that was way beyond a traditional grandparent-grandchild dynamic. I attended college at Cal State Northridge, close enough to spend even more time with them. Being just down the street, I started working at Ed Pink Racing Engines, and that's when our relationship really deepened. I got to see Grampy not just as my hero, but as someone deeply respected by so many. Plus, I could always count on lunch and some classic Grampy advice to fix whatever problem I was facing. And according to my mom, I was one of the very few people that could also give him advice right back. That's just who he was. He was always there, always ready to help, and always had just the right solution. When I moved to Montana for my first news job, Grampy and Baba were some of my first visitors. They made sure I was fully prepared for winter, including studded snow tires on my Ford Mustang. We packed adventures into every visit. Train rides, boat tours, hidden restaurants, and concerts in the park. We took full advantage of everything Montana had to offer. Later, I landed a job as a newscaster in Bakersfield, which became my hometown. Best of all, I was just 2 hours over the grapevine from my favorite people. We took turns making the drive, celebrating birthdays, and just hanging out together. And then I got engaged. Tyson passed the Grampy test with flying colors. The two of them would sit on the couch with whiskey in hand, totally in sync. And when Tyson and I got married, as you saw, Grampy walked me down the aisle. When our son was born, that's the crazy one that you're seeing, there was no question what his name would be, Decker Edward. I remember texting Grampy a photo of the signed birth certificate. It was so special. And when we came home from the hospital, Grampy was already there, ready to meet his namesake. Then came Kinley, the little more peaceful one, in 2023, and the two of them instantly connected. She absolutely adored him, and the feeling was clearly mutual. Decker will be 4 on Wednesday. I'm so thankful they had the opportunity to know their great-grandfather. We never went more than a couple of weeks without talking, whether it was the phone call, a visit, or even just a text. This is the hardest loss I've ever experienced, but I take so much comfort in knowing how full our time was together. Thanks, baby. There's nothing I wish that I would have done differently, no trip I wish we would have taken, no moment I wish we would have shared, because we did it all. We were always there for him, for them, and they were always there for us. Grampy was more than a grandfather. He was my mentor, my biggest fan, and one of my very best friends. I see him in my kids, in the choices I make, and in the life we've built. And we will carry him with us always. Thank you.
How'd you like to have to follow that? I think Kinley thought that maybe you got a traffic ticket or something and you were crying up here. Speaking of having to follow that, Tyson, you're not nervous at all, are you? Yeah, what's the worst that could possibly happen up here? Well, try not to think about that. Tyson's Kristin's husband, and Decker's are... Is this your vodka here, Decker? You said yes? I think I've discovered the problem here. Grandson-in-law, and there's nobody here to dispute he's not his favorite grandson-in-law, right? Sheriff's Department? Okay, we have our sergeant drag racing. This is Ed Pink's Sarge, grandson Tyson Davis. You can be as nervous as you want, and it doesn't matter. We can still be great at this, brother. If not, just give the mic to Decker.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a crybaby, so bear with me. I'm Tyson, as he said. I'm Kristin's husband and Ed's grandson. I wanted to speak today because I felt I had the unique perspective of the two sides of Ed. The family med Ed and the celebrity Ed. I might get beat up for saying this, but I didn't know who Ed Pink was before I met Kristin. I know that's pretty crazy, but it's true. I'll start by talking about the first time I met Ed, or Edster as I called him. Kristin and I had just started dating. Kristin and Nancy idolized Ed, so I heard a lot about him. They even went as far as to say if Ed didn't approve of me, we would have to break up. If you think I'm joking, I'm absolutely not. Needless to say, when the time came to meet Ed and Sylvia, I was intimidated. And now I knew all about him. He was a giant in the race industry that had accomplished enough for 3 lifetimes. Most of all, if Ed and Sylvia didn't like me, the woman I planned to marry was going to break up with me. She didn't know that at the time, of course, but... So the night came, Nancy's birthday, dinner at Hosey's with Ed, Sylvia, and all their friends. Just a huge table of people. Kristin and I walked in. Ed and Sylvia stood up and greeted me with big smiles and a handshake. Throughout the dinner, Ed and Sylvia engaged in conversation with me, asked questions, and listened to me. They welcomed me and made me feel like I've known them for years. It was amazing. This man I was so scared to meet made all of my fears go right out the window in seconds. When it was time to say our goodbyes, Ed and Sylvia pulled me in for a big hug instead of a handshake this time. This was a big deal because at that time I knew I was accepted in their family, or at least they approved of me at the time. Honestly, I can go on for an hour of every detail of that night because it made such a lasting impression on me, but I'll spare you. Throughout the years, I saw that Ed made everyone feel this way. Nobody was not his friend, whether it be a crowded racetrack or a drag strip where people are trying to grab a picture with the old master. In the backyard of one of our raging parties, talking to everyone, this was before kids, of course, or a family gathering, Ed loved to engage with people. He loved to meet new people, share stories, and find out what everyone was up to. One thing I think everyone knows about Ed is he never wasted a moment of his life. He did what he loved, building hot rods and being with his people, and nothing came between that. As a grandfather, he was at every holiday and family gathering, even though it was hard for him to travel at times. Ed and Sylvia would regularly FaceTime Kristin and I just to say hi or set up a lunch date or see what we're up to. Ed and Sylvia always included me and made me feel like their grandson early on. When our kids were born, it gave Edster the honored title of great-grandpa, which he held with pride. And I think Kristin's status dropped a little bit because he loved Decker and Kinley, and they loved him. Decker the Wrecker, as we call him at times, loved to climb all over his grampy. Every visit, Ed would walk away with a few more bruises, but he didn't mind at all. Of course, Kinley, we all know her, she's a lot nicer. She just loved to curl up next to him on the couch and cuddle. I am thankful the kids got to spend so much time with their grampy because they will always have the memories of him. For me, I'll miss him being at all the family gatherings. All the family gatherings and holidays. I'll miss the phone calls and lunch dates. I'll miss the couch whiskeys and the couch naps that followed soon thereafter. I'll miss the conversations and the stories. I'll miss watching him play with his great-grandkids with such joy, as if nobody was looking, even though everyone was. Most of all, I'll miss my grampy. I cherish all the memories, and I wouldn't change a thing. As the patriarch of the family, Sylvia, Nancy, and Kristin were the most important, as he felt it was his duty to protect them and do anything he could for them. I know we would never have to have this conversation, but if there was one thing I could tell him right now, it'd be rest easy. I'll take it from here.
And now a word from Decker.
And Friday and Saturday and Friday and Tuesday and a game. We played the game.
All right, that was a short version, folks. We're gonna get the full-length version of that one in a little bit. Sarge, well played, man. I know that couldn't have been easy. Doing a little research on Ed, and you look at people's quotes and you look at what their friends say about him, and it was pretty apparent Ed was a better listener than a talker and always made a point of spending time around the people that he admired. You had Mickey Thompson, Danny's here, Louis Center, goes back to the very beginning of hot rodding, Vic Edelbrock, a name that's still synonymous with hot rodding, and has anybody seen Frank, Mr. Baney? Frank, if you want to start heading up here, I saved you your very own parking space there. And when Nancy talked about the memories going back to the 40s, I thought with this group of speakers, maybe we'll start out with somebody that can paint a picture that goes back close to the beginning, certainly right out of Ed's time in the Army and meeting one of the men that would turn out to be one of his best friends. But before they became best friends, Ed was a gopher for Frank's pop, Lou Baney, who's one of the all-time hitters in drag racing. And I just find it interesting as we get older, Frank, you look at, the man's always been called the old master, as long as you can remember, as long as I can remember, right? And you just think, well, that makes sense. He's been doing this forever. Do you guys realize he got that nickname before he ever even turned 40? That's how much admiration he had in the industry. Anyway, the first group of the racing speakers help you guys paint a little picture of your pops here. Frank Baney.
Thank you. Ed actually became part of my family about 10 years before I became part of the family. He started working for my dad in like 1947, and it didn't matter what he knew because he caught on extra quick, and my dad and Ed were just so like-minded. They had quick wit, they thought the same, they worked the same. It was just a tremendous relationship that blossomed like immediately. So that was in 1947. So 20 years passed by, and Ed starts a family, and Billy and Nancy and myself and my sister Kathy, and we're all meeting. They were living in Van Nuys, and we were living in Fountain Valley at this time, and we would meet at this Dominguez Hills golf course for dinner. And it was just great times listening to my dad and Ed go back and forth and, picking on each other and picking on us. And as soon as we were done eating, they'd kick us out and we'd go terrorize the people at the driving range, and just had a great time. But in talking to Billy over this last week, he reminded me of one time racing. At this point, my dad was building the camera motors for the dragster, and I forget if it was Prudhomme driving, who, by the way, I'm glad I'm not following Prudhomme, because that'd be like following Prudhomme.
I put him last. The rest of you are welcome.
So Billy reminded me that we were at Orange County Raceway, and like I said, I don't remember if it was Kelly Brown or Prudhomme driving, but the car left hard. It carried the front wheels about a foot off the ground for like 300 feet out and set it down, and just was really marching. About 800 feet, dead quiet. Candles went out, nothing. And my dad looks over at Ed and says, "What happened?" And Ed says, "What am I, a crystal ball?" So it was just like they just that quick, and it was just amazing to even be around them. But I was kind of taught with Ed, and same with Prudhomme and McEwen, that you kind of speak when spoken to. I mean, it's awesome that I could talk to them, but I didn't bother any of those guys, even now with Don, and I don't call them just to say how's the weather or whatever, but when they call me, I don't care what they want to talk about. I'm listening until they're done talking. And that's kind of how it was whenever I'd go out to a racetrack or an event, and I knew Ed was around. I would always kind of go look around, and I'd spot him, and he always had a crowd of people around him, whether he was signing or they were just talking or whatever. So I would maybe catch his eye and get a wave, or he'd wave back, and I'd go on and kind of mind my own business. And then more times than not, Sylvia and Nancy and Ed would be pulling up around in my area, and everybody would be nudging me. "Oh, hey, there's Pink, and they'd pull into our pit, and we were just like, holy crap, and he would get out, and he would just talk to me. I mean, how's it going? How's your sister? Just anything. And he'd usually tell me a story, which some I knew, some I didn't, but either way, just watching Ed tell me was fantastic. And it always kind of, at some point, ended up, wow, your dad would have loved this, or, I sure miss your dad, or something like that. But it was just crazy that he would take the time to come over and talk to me. And it just made my heart soar, just even knowing that he even remembered who I was and would just take that time. And I just really appreciate that I got that opportunity. Thank you.
So what would you give to have a time machine? I saw Don Long was in the crowd here. Go back 61 years to 1964 when Ed and Don said, let's build a top fuel car. I'll do the chassis, you do the motor. And just stand in the corner and listen for days at what they were doing at that time. And that's the picture that I think is awesome, to listen to people like Frank relay that and take us in a time machine back there. Appreciate that very much, Frank. Mike Reed, where are you, my friend? Where are you, Mike? We're not taking roll call, and you don't have to run. So Nancy had pointed this out, a little bit of irony. We lost Ed on April 27th. 4/27, yeah. don't know if he had anything to do with that, but if you think about the man that was known for that camera motor and the things that he's done. So of the speakers that are going to be coming up here, there's a lot of groups from Ed's hot rod career. There's a lot of groups from Ed's racing career. And I'm hoping that as we kind of go back and forth between the drag racing and the hot rodding, you guys just get a more in-depth understanding of what made Ed, frankly, so damn cool. So, Mike, you want to take a moment, just tell people how you knew Ed, and then tell us something about him.
I originally met Ed in 1972 at Phoenix. I was working for A.J. Foyt at the time, and Ed was just perusing around Indy cars and trying to, I think, get his feet wet and what's going on. And we had a little incident. If anybody's familiar with Phoenix, the old track, when you come off of turn 4, was the pit entrance. And I was at the back end of the car.
I swear it's not going to bite you. I swear.
I was at the back end of the car, and somebody spun and was headed right towards the pits. Well, AJ was behind me, and he gave me a shove. I took off for the fence. With him right behind me, Ed was standing on the other side of the fence. I took Ed out, and then I took AJ out at the same time. So that's kind of how I first met him. But we got to be good friends later in life when I was working on AJ's car and then on Tom Sneva's car with George Bignotti. And Ed and I were pretty good friends. I was doing work for Ed's shop at the time, doing machine work, hard chroming crankshafts, and individual parts for his race cars that he was building. And he came to me one day and said, "Hey, you're working for Bignotti now, right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I'm his engine man now, and if I'm not there, I need you to be my behind the scenes guy, because George always kept everything tight. He wouldn't tell anybody shit." And so I had a book. I still have the book today of every engine that Ed built, with all the spark plug readings, all the ignition timing. And I had to, when I got back from a race, first thing Monday morning, I got a phone call. Ed Pink, Mike Reed, was from Ed. And he'd go, "What have you got for me?" So I'd have to tell him. And he goes, "That's a whole different story from what Bignotti said." And I go, "Well, I've got the book." So we went on for 2 or 3 years. We won Indy together. I was with George when Tom Sneva was driving, and Ed was doing the engines for that car. And we just stayed close friends. Later years, my dad wanted to build a midget. And I had been working for Steve Lewis. And we were having problems with engines at some of the racetracks. And some of the engines had to be Ford engines because we had P.J. Jones driving, and he was under contract to Ford. So it had to be a Ford engine. Well, we went to Belleville, and as soon as I saw the place, I said, with these engines that we got now, they weren't Ed's, they were another manufacturer. We're in deep shit here. We ain't gonna make it. We blew up 3 engines before the race even started. And I told Steve, I don't know if Steve's here or not today, but I had told Steve, I said, we need to get another engine guy. And he says, "Oh, no, God, we can't do that. We got to run a Ford." And I said, "I'm talking about a builder." And I contacted Ed, and I said, "Hey, you interested in doing midget motors?" oh shit, no, I've done those before. I don't want to mess with those damn things. And I said, well, this is a top flight crew. We got like 4 cars. We got the top drivers. We got a good operation going here. I said, send me some of your brochures. So he sent me about 3 or 4 brochures, and I went back to Indy, and I just laid them on Bob East's desk, who was building the cars. And he came to me later at the racetrack and goes, yeah, I know who this Ed Pink guy is. He builds them drag race engines. And I go, no, he builds everything. I said, we're changing valves after every practice, valve springs after every practice, and after qualifying, and before the race, we're putting new valve springs in. I go, he builds these engines that go 24 hours, and they're not changing valve springs. And so I got back, and Ed goes, did you talk to those guys? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, what'd they say? And they go, well, that you never built a midget motor. And he says, well, you go back and tell them guys that those midget motors are nothing but tractor engines with fuel injection. So I went back and told them that and tried to get them to set up an appointment to come and see Ed because they were looking for new engine builders. And we took them a year to go out and see Ed. Finally, they did. And then it took Ed another year to perfect the Ford engine that was so famous and won all the midget races. First time out ever ran, it won the race at Phoenix. And then my dad wanted me to build a midget, so we did. I had Michael Lewis from Indiana driving it for us. And first time that we went out and ran, we won the Copper Classic, beat the 4 of the 9 cars. And Steve Lewis was the first one to come up and congratulate my dad and myself. So that's about it. Ed and I have remained friends for 40 years. And whenever he'd call, he'd go, Mike Reed. And I'd go, Ed Pink. And when we hung up, famous saying, my kids even say it to me today, be seeing ya. That was his famous saying, be seeing ya. So Ed, be seeing ya.
Thank you, Mike. I don't know if any of you are keeping track. First off, thank yourselves. Nobody's cell phone has gone off, and we've made it half hour into the program. Secondly, the swear jar in the back, Mike will be putting the first $2 in. I'm sure that will add up quite a bit before the end of the night. Where is Mr. Hibler? Head on up, Harry. Drag race nicknames. Man, I remember the era when everybody had one. In fact, one year I decided to paint a helmet with all drag race nicknames, and there's at least 3 people, nope, there's 4 people in this room that are on my helmet. Floyd Lippincott Jr. right there. Ace is somewhere in the house. Snake's somewhere in the house. And I got hand grenade here. Snake? Bob, you need to turn the hearing aid up just a little bit there, my friend. God, is there some history in here? Harry, speaking of history, managed San Fernando drag strip and the stories that we could tell. One day I would love to have a 2-hour San Fernando reunion and just listen to him tell the stories about the airplanes and the race cars there. Went on to a 3-decade career at Peterson Publishing. It's a guy that's seen it all, done it all. Selection committee for the International Drag Race Hall of Fame. I would be remiss to leave out Greg Sharp. Greg, raise your hand there. Greg has gone through some health difficulties. We're not letting him drive anymore till he gets his vision back, but he found it important enough to come out and celebrate Ed Pink today. And anyway, one of the guys that I just like handing a mic to and listening to. Take it away, Harry.
Ed Pink and I met over 65 years ago. And we developed a friendship over that period of time that was just incredible. Now, Nancy told you a little bit about the family history. If you want the other side of that history, I'll talk to you after this is over, because I've got a different version of Ed at family sometimes. But no, he was a real family man. But, you know, one of the greatest impacts that Ed had on my life was his viewpoint of friendship, and you've heard this. Ed used to tell me, he'd say, you know, I have a lot of good acquaintances, but I only have a very few good friends. So to him, friendship was really a super thing. At one time, Ed's shop was right across the parking lot from Tony Nancy's upholstery shop. And we used to get together over there at night, and we'd have some great bench racing stories, and some of them true, some of them false. But, you know, it was interesting to see the relationship that we developed from friendship. And when Tony decided to close the shop and retire, he moved to Georgia. And Ed and I were sitting there talking one day, and he said, you know, we got to go see Tony. You know, that was just out of the blue. So what did we do? We got on a plane and went to Georgia and saw Tony. It was after that, ever so often, Ed and I'd be sitting talking, and he'd come around. He said, you know, it's about time we got to go see Ed, or go see Tony again. So we'd get on the plane and we'd go see Tony. That was Ed's idea of friendship. And sometimes, it was just out of the blue, he would pick up the phone, and you've heard it from Frankie. He'd pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Our conversations didn't last very long because we just didn't have a lot to say other than how you doing. But it was the friendship that he extended that made you think, hey, he's thinking about me and he's a friend. I also got to know Ed as a teacher, and I know that may sound a little funny, but you got to remember, for the first half of my life, I was in the construction business as a carpenter and a general contractor. So to me, if it was close, it was pretty good. With Ed, it had to be exact or it was no good. And he was a perfectionist. And one of my interesting things, Ed and I went to lunch one day, and we were sitting there, and he says, I got to get some bolts for the motor I'm building. So we had to go to ARP and get the bolts. And I said, why don't you just run down to the local hardware store and buy those bolts? And that was my first mistake. The second mistake is we started talking a little bit about pistons and rods and stuff. I said, why don't you just go down, you know, pick up the phone, call Vinolia or somebody and order a set of pistons, go to get a set of rods. That was a big mistake. I got an hour-and-a-half tutorial on how to build a motor, what it meant, why did you build it, what RPM range was it going to operate at. I didn't care. I just wanted to get from one end to the other. Ed said, no, it may work better halfway down, all the way down, so where do you want it? And that was Ed, you know. It's like, it was a perfection thing. And it just, that was Ed's life. It's hard for me to put into words some of the things that happened with Ed. I worked at his house. I worked at his shop. We did so many things together, and you know, it was just a friendship that I can't tell you what it meant. And kind of one of the last things that I'll throw out here is that thinking about, I'll give you a little commercial here, his book. When Ed put that book together, you start reading it. I picked the book up and I didn't set it down until I finished it, simply because he put together his story chronologically, just like he did everything at the shop, at the engine. Everything was together, synced out, and that was his whole life. And you know, most of you guys, I got to tell you a funny story that this is my sense of humor, so you can take it for what you want. But one of my most fun things was when I would go see Keith Black, I would wear my Ed Pink shirt or my Ed Pink jacket. And when I would go see Ed, I would wear my Keith Black jacket or my Keith Black. And it was interesting to hear the comments from both of them, because, you know, they were rivals, but they were not enemies. Ed was best known to everybody as the old master. If you want my take on it, my name would have been the old perfectionist. And with that, enjoy it, and we'll see Ed soon. Thank you.
Frank, you want to start heading up here? As a kid growing up in the San Fernando Valley, and I like how Southern California in the 60s, in the 70s, arguably into the very early 80s, you had a lot of different enclaves and everybody had a place to race. Now, not many enclaves and no place to race. Indy's become the new hub of drag racing simply because we just don't have any racetracks anymore for many different reasons. But as a Valley kid, and I saw Larry Dixon Jr. out there, Pat Dixon, yep, the good old days, right? I remember when my parents would say, hey, would you like to go shopping? No, like on my list of things to do that would not be on page 10. Well, we're going to go to Fedco. Yes, and I'd run and get in the car. Not because I wanted to go shopping at Fedco, but because when you went down Raymer Avenue, you drove right past Ed Pink's shop, and I just loved if I could get my parents to slow down, pressing my face against the window and looking and seeing the rigs in the parking lot there. And as a young kid, I told you, everybody was 8 feet tall back then. And that was a place that sparked a lot of success and these people that I got to go see at the racetrack. So Frank, you want to head on up, and Frank's going to actually read a letter. Frank used to be general manager at Ed Pink Racing Engines, and today you're narrating for free, apparently.
Thank you.
You take mine.
So Jack says I was the general manager for Ed Pink's Racing Engines for 20 years, and I worked with Ed for 5 years before that. And during that whole period is when Ed had his very close relationship with Steve Lewis. And I'm here to read Steve Lewis's speech to you, who unfortunately couldn't be here. And there probably are not many people here that don't know Steve Lewis, but was the owner of the very famous all-dominant 9 racing midget team, and also the founder and longtime owner of the performance racing industry. So thank you, Frank, for helping out here, as I certainly wanted to be here at this gathering to celebrate our good friend Ed Pink's life. My first recollection of seeing Ed Pink in action was in 1959, when Don Garlitz came west and participated at Riverside Raceway drag race event. I was there with my friend Ari as a low-level helper on his A fuel dragster. I had heard a lot about Ed Pink, and there he was working on one of his customers' dragsters. Little did I know many years down the road at that time that Ed would play a key role in providing amazing, reliable horsepower for our 9 racing midget engines with a powerful Ford 4-cylinder midget engine. Ed Pink and his talented team changed our racing lives in so many ways. His professionalism and desire for excellence were the key elements that came along with the powerful 4-cylinder Ford midget engines. For 19 years, Ed Pink provided engines that won over 100 USAC main events and numerous championships. Ed Pink truly was the old master, not only creating such racing engine works of art, but also the master of developing friendships. I am forever in debt to Ed Pink for all he did to provide all those race-winning Ford engines for 19 years. During this period of time, a wonderful and special friendship occurred with Ed that I cherished deeply. I learned many lessons from Ed during the time we spent together, and after reading his book that was so beautifully edited by Bones Brochure, I learned even more about the amazing and special man. Ed Pink was special, and the reason this room is packed today with all of his friends because of their enduring friendships and desire to pay respect to this special, interesting, and talented man that went out of his way to take care of all of us in so many unique ways. Here's a special moment that I was able to witness that truly illustrated the type of person Ed Pink was. We are running for the first time our new Ed Pink Ford at the annual Copper Classic event, held in late January 1996 at the Phoenix Mile, where young Kenny Irwin was the driver. prior to the race, we had tested twice at Phoenix, and the new Ford, Ed Pink Ford, showed great promise. You could tell Kenny Irwin was confident after the 2 Phoenix tests, and we were all anxious to see the new Ed Pink Ford engine perform during the Copper Classic midget race. With just a few laps to go, Kenny Irwin passed Billy Boat for the lead. Then coming down for the white flag, Kenny had at least a 3-car lead. Would it be possible to have the Beast chassis with the Ed Pink Ford and Kenny Irwin at the helm win a coveted Copper Classic race? It certainly looked like a win was going to happen. Kenny entered turn 3 ahead of Boat. Then the 2 cars disappeared as they went under the pedestrian bridge. Next, we saw the lead 2 midgets almost side by side coming off turn 4. And now Billy Boat and Kenny Irwin were dead even. What happened next was both Kenny and Billy came upon 2 midgets racing side by side within sight of the finish line that blocked the progress of the 2 faster cars. Then at the finish line, Billy Boat nipped Kenny by inches and won the race. Kenny Irwin came oh so close to winning the race with the brand new Ed Pink Ford midget engine, but circumstances out of his control enabled Billy Boat to take the checkered flag first. I thought first about how the team and Kenny Irwin were going to react to the almost win. When I saw Kenny Irwin with his head down bringing his number 9 midget back to the pit area, I could tell that he was devastated. This is when Ed Pink came to Kenny's side as Kenny climbed out of the car. Ed put his arm around Kenny's shoulder and whispered in his ear words that certainly resonated as a slight, small smile emerged from Kenny. The Ed Pink Ford engines powered Kenny to numerous wins in 1996, and as a result, Kenny Irwin earned the 1996 National Midget Championship. The Ed Pink Fords were lightning fast, but at a moment in Phoenix, Ed Pink provided the kind of gesture of encouragement towards young Kenny Irwin that gave him the confidence to continue on and ultimately win the 1996 USAC Championship. This was a very special moment of kindness that I witnessed, and for Kenny Irwin too, it was special kind of kindness that made a huge difference. Sylvia, Nancy, and Bill, thank you for sharing your beloved Ed Pink with all of us. He truly was a special, amazing person, totally dedicated to his mission, and we have all benefited from our experience with Ed Pink, the old master.
Well played, sir. It's never easy to read somebody else's writing, and Frank, I did not realize that was a 417-page manuscript, but by God, you buzzed right through it. Well played. Where is Ace? Where are you, Ed? If you can go ahead and start heading up here. Hey, show of hands in the crowd, and it's not a time to be humble. I just want to be factual here, and I want to paint a picture for the entire audience. If you belong to any Motorsports Hall of Fame, please raise your hand and keep it up. That's pretty cool company to be around. And there's a lot of people here that belong to multiple Halls of Fame. Ace is one of them. Started in a... I would have caught you, Ed, except my reaction times haven't been that good lately. Ace actually started driving top fuel cars in the early 60s and transitioned to fuel funny cars in the late 60s, and the era was completely different. When I'm listening to them talk here, I think for the newer folks, they may not realize, I drive a contemporary big show funny car, and we carry 8 spare short blocks plus the one in the race car. We carry 2 complete tractor trailers full of spare parts because we cycle parts out so much. Nitro cars have never been friendly on your parts, but there was a time when you would go to somebody who had sorted out a combination, be it a Keith Black, an Ed Pink, a Sid Waterman. You would pay them and take an entire long block from their shop, bolt on the intake manifold, supercharger, and injector, and you'd go race. And sometimes you'd burn a piston, and it was laborious to take the top end of the motor off and change one piston, but you did. You left the clutch in, so it was typically the driver as a mechanic, one other person as a mechanic, and you might have a friend that could drive the tow vehicle around. And when you look at people I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's a cream of the crop type of person here. Somebody that's smart in the 60s stays smart in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. The guy was a badass when the motor was in front of him in a dragster. He was amazing when the motor was in front of him in the funny car. And then when he got out and decided, I'm going to start crew chiefing one of these things. And I'm sorry, Brent, but I've got to throw you under the table on this. My buddy Brent Cannon, who is my son's godfather and a huge Ed McCulloch fan, and knew how hard of a driver you were, but when it was time to become a crew chief, he goes, I don't know how good a crew chief Ed's going to be. Man, have I had fun with that with him over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, the ace, Ed McCulloch.
Thank you. I met Ed 60 years ago. It wasn't until 7 years after that, when I became a customer of Ed, did our friendship truly begin to grow. Ed Pink Racing Engines, you could go by any day in the back of the shop, where of his shop, where the other shops were. You could drive in there any day, and the who's who of drag racing was probably back there working on their equipment. So many of the memories that I have of Ed, the ones that I really cherish are the ones non-race related. I don't know, I mean, this is about racing. This is what we did. This was what our life was. Ed helped make my life what it is today. But back in the day, behind Pinks, there was always something going on. I mean, there was characters that were out there. I mean, it might be a card game. It might be a dice game. You might just be pitching quarters against the wall. But we were doing something and having fun. And in that same time frame, a lot of the guys got into riding dirt bikes. Now the story, I've got a couple of stories and I'll be quick with them, but one of the stories, and some of you have heard it before, if you have, just bear with me. A particular weekend, we took our dirt bikes, we went up to Jawbone, and we'd camped out, and we were out riding our dirt bikes. Sunday morning, I get up, I got my leathers on, I got my boots on, and I fire my bike up, and I'm just riding out on this little trail around and just warming the thing up, and I come around this corner, and there was a cactus there. And as I saw this cactus, it happened so fast that I was pretty much committed to go through it. Well, little did I know, but I thought to protect myself, I threw my legs up against the handlebars to go through the cactus. Well, yeah, but that exposed my ass to the cactus. So I make my way back into the area where we were camped. Nancy has pictures of all of this. What a true friend will do. Ed Pink picked the cactus out of my ass with needle nose pliers. And from that day on, I mean, today, I mean, we were friends then, and he always took care of me. Another quick story is we used to do a lot of things with our families, and we would go places, and we used to go snow skiing a lot. This one day we're out skiing, and Ed was a pretty cautious skier. He wasn't that aggressive. And Ed had his Ed Pink Racing, think pink, yellow, bright yellow jacket on, and we're out. I hadn't seen him for a little while, and I'm coming down this run. And quite a ways down there, I see this yellow jacket laying alongside the run. And the closer I got, as I got closer, I mean, this dark area is all around Ed. And the closer I got, this dark area was blood. I mean, it was red. And my heart stopped. I mean, I get down there, and the closer I get, Ed's laying there laughing. And as closer I get up, and I mean, I stop. I says, "Are you all right?" Well, when he finally collected himself, Ed had a Bota bag with some sort of raspberry schnapps in it. And when he crashed, the Bodebag broke, and I mean, it's all over the white snow, and I mean, it sure looked like blood. We sat there and laughed about that and went on in and enjoyed our time. As the years went on, Ed went on in the different forms of motorsports, and he continued on, but we always stayed in touch with one another. And later on, we got into the hot rod deal. Ed had a street rod, and I had a street rod, and we would periodically make some either day trips or maybe overnight trips or maybe a long trip. But those trips and those memories away from the racetrack, I mean, I cherish, and my thoughts with Ed and the things that he did, and we go back to the racing years and what he did for me back in the day. He took care of me. I mean, Prudhomme was. He was a big player in that time. I mean, Schumacher. I mean, anybody that was anybody was an Ed Pink guy at the time. So the thing about Ed, I just cherish the time that we had together. I thank him for all of the things that he did, all of the knowledge that he taught me, and the knowledge that I gained from Ed in those years carried me throughout my life and made me as successful as I was in the world of drag racing. And so I thank Ed for that, and I just want to say that rest in peace, my friend. We miss you.
Well played. Go off the front. Couple updates. If you folks were wondering why the background noise was a minimum, welcome back, Decker. We have missed you for the last 5 minutes. And Ed will be donating $2 more to the swear jar. Chris, Mr. Brown, where are you? Chris is British. We're not judging here. I don't know that we're applauding. I'm just stating a fact here. Would you do a favor for us, please? As loud as you can without the microphone, say the word brilliant.
Brilliant.
Okay, the anodized metal material on the hull of the boat is called what?
Aluminium.
Okay, he just passed the British test here. Okay, so Chris comes from F3, a lot of rights and left turns there, right? Had a lot of experience in that, and has spent, I guess you're over 20 years now at ARP? Over 30. The good news is I always want to be factual when I do the research here, and sometimes when you come upon something on the internet, one, it may not be true, and two, it may not be current. So I called my buddy Bob Flora, and I said, is Chris still working there? He said, what do you mean? What have you heard? I said, that's all I need to know. He's still working there. Chris Brown.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I met Ed through ARP, where I've worked for many years, and this is how we got to know each other and became friends. Another friend of mine told me recently that life is just so much better to go through with a good friend. And I think a lot of us all know what that meant with Ed. Ed absolutely personified that sentiment and had so many qualities that deepened our friendship. In no particular order, respect. My friendship with Ed was forged in my enormous respect for him, initially for all his accomplishments in motorsports, in so many disciplines. Let's face it, if it weren't for him and many other pioneers in the early days of post-war racing, the motorsports industry wouldn't be what it became and continues to be. Over time, as we got to know each other, that respect grew because of all his positive character traits. I always enjoyed helping Ed with whatever he was working on. because he was always so grateful. Kindness. Ed would call me regularly, as he did with many of us in this room, just to see how I was doing, or to find out or follow up on something meaningful in my life that I'd shared with him, or to find out how someone important in my life was doing. His sense of humor. Ed would constantly interject humor into whatever it was we would talk about, especially if that subject were a bit stressful, as a way of taking the edge off. He would look at me with a glint in his eye and a smile on his face, and, for example, tell me a funny story about a similar situation he'd run into in his life. And it always worked. It always made me smile. Wisdom. Ed was one of the wisest men I've met in my life, and would share that wisdom by giving me advice and offering me perspective on what really matters: friends and family and integrity. Ed was also incredibly humble. For all his accomplishments and all the races and championship his engines won, you would never know it. When I would ask him about some of those engine projects, he would talk about them almost matter-of-factly. I'm so glad that he decided to write the book. Although, as we know, the focus was more on the people, which was so important to the successes he racked up. And on a side note there, with my European roots, when I started working for ARP, I started traveling abroad looking for customers. And during the last 30 years, I've met a lot of really great people, a lot of whom I found out over the years knew Ed and knew of Ed and would follow all the stories that were written about him in all the different magazines, Hot Rod magazine probably being one of the most prominent. He inspired a lot of people abroad. One of my good friends at Ilmore Engineering, who was a purchasing manager there for 35 years, went to see Don Prudhomme race at Santa Pot in the 1 year that he raced there. And Tim Roberts followed Ed's career also. He was absolutely ecstatic when I sent him a copy of Ed's book. Ed's legacy will live on through all our personal anecdotes and for many years to come through his book, and I hope it inspires generations of young and old people in the future. We will all miss Ed and will continue to miss him, but he left us all a gift, and that is each other. Through Ed, we have all met and made many friends and built relationships, and I think that is one heck of a great legacy. Thank you.
Jackie, you want to nudge Nigel, send him up to the stage here? I always like when you're emceeing these events and that painful pause when you're calling somebody up who's having a discussion of their own in the back row, and the third time you call them, they decide to meander up at a snail's pace, and you're sitting there twiddling your fingers. Thank you, Jackie. Well played, Nigel. I've been trying to give a brief intro for most of the speakers that have come up here, but I don't know that I could do much service to Nigel here. So I would like you to tell and me to enjoy what you did with your career, how you and Ed crossed paths, and then talk to us about Ed.
Oh, well, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about Ed. No, I want to talk about Ed. I mean, my
Okay, do me a favor. Say brilliant.
Brilliant.
Say aluminum.
Aluminum.
Chris, is that right?
Aluminium. Hey, I'm an American citizen now, you know. My friendship with Ed is probably the most unlikely out of everybody who's going to speak here tonight, because I don't know anything about engines. I don't know anything about racing. But Ed and I met, we were neighbors, And we both had roadsters built by Roy Brizio, and so we had that in common. We've been on so many road trips together, I've lost count, with our wives, Sylvia and Jackie. We've been up and down the 101 so many times. We'd go to the LA Roadster Show, the Grand National Roadster Show, and up to Pleasanton every year to the Good Guys Show. And we'd always stop off at Paso Robles Inn and spend the night there. We'd have so much fun together. We would always be laughing and joking. Ed was always a good storyteller. More recently, on those road trips, I would lead sometimes, Ed would lead sometimes. And I'd look and I'd see Ed and Sylvia in my rearview mirror, and then after a few minutes, I wouldn't see him anymore. There'd be a red dot way back on the horizon. And I'd say to Jackie, do you think we should pull off? Do you think Ed's all right? And we'd just keep going. And then, wow! Oh, here's Ed. He would go by, and we'd always know where he was. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here.
Hey. Nigel, while you're looking at your notes, you into music?
I'm in the music business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're in the music business?
Yes.
Like management?
Sort of, yeah.
Would there be anybody that played guitar that you ever managed?
Oh, Eric Clapton.
Oh, okay, that would have been cool.
But I don't manage him. I'm his personal assistant. Yeah. Ed and I had lunch together probably once a week for the last 10 years. And Ed's book's been mentioned a few times. Well, I was fortunate enough to hear most of those stories directly from the author's mouth. More recently, he would invite me to go to his racers' lunches, where I met some of his old friends from his racing days, and I was just a fly on the wall listening to their stories, which was a great honor and privilege for me. At the age of 75, I became Ed's mailroom boy. I would help him pack the books. He would sign the books. I would sign the book. I would wrap the books, pack the books, and then together we'd take them to the post office. Sometimes we'd deliver them to the auto bookstore in Burbank, and then we'd go to Bob's Big Boy for lunch. We can't miss that. I said to Ed one day, how long have you been coming here? He said, I've been coming here since I was 19. I said, they should have a seat here for you with your picture on the wall, that's for sure. On one of our trips, on one of our lunch dates, we were sitting at a traffic light. Ed was driving, and this car was alongside us, and it kept edging forward at the light. And Ed said to me, we're not going to let that Toyota Prius beat us off the light, are we, Nigel? And I said, I guess not, Ed. And the light turned green, and pow, off we went. I think you guys call that a hole shot. Ed was 92 at the time, but he still had that racing spirit. He told me stories about when they would go to Bob's Big Boy and they would go street racing. A couple of the guys would pull off to the right, so the local cop would follow them, and then the racers would go off to the left and find somewhere to go and burn up their tires. I came here with Ed when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and in 2023 he invited me and my wife Jackie to accompany Nancy and Sylvia and Ed up to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he was inducted into another Hall of Fame. We got to Camarillo Airport, and here's a private jet for the five of us. I said to Ed, wow, Ed, I'm impressed. A private jet? He said, you didn't think I was going to bring you on some chicken shit deal, did you? We had a lot of fun on that trip. It was a great time. We always had good times together. Ed was a dear, sweet friend. As I said, it was an unlikely friendship, but it's one I'll cherish for the rest of my life. As the racers amongst you know, Ed was key to the development of the 427 engine for both racing and hot rods. So it's no surprise really that when Ed chose to go to the great racetrack in the sky, he chose to leave us on 4/27/2025. I miss you, Ed. Lunches aren't the same without you. God bless you, my friend. I love you.
Nigel touched on it, heard the word Hall of Fame mentioned a few times. And that's why I had that show of hands earlier. I don't know that being in a Hall of Fame is anything anybody sets out to do as a young person. I think you chase a passion, and if you're really good at it and you continue to follow it and you become great at it and you're influential and you make a difference, then it just happens. And again, I hate to single people out in this room because I'm going to be missing so much horsepower in the crowd here. But there's a young blonde-haired lady by the name of Linda. Linda, if you just stand up over there. Linda Vaughn, thank you for coming out. I'll send my invoice later for getting you the mention. Nigel had also mentioned, if you're keeping track, thanks to Nigel, the swear jar is up to $5 now, but I don't think we're over yet. But Nigel had mentioned Bob's Big Boy, he'd mentioned Arrow Books in Burbank, and it occurred to me, you look around this room, Hall of Fame's right back there, relatively new. It's going to be added to every year. Many of those members are sitting in attendance today, and this is the Lions Automobilia Museum, but Rick Lorenzen wanted this building to represent so much more. It's got the boats, it's got the land speed cars, it's got the drag race cars, it's got the hot rods here. I think this is such a fitting place to do a celebration for Ed. He had his fingerprint on so many of the vehicles that were out here. Our next speaker, Herb, you want to go ahead and head up here. You want to talk about a man whose DNA is all over all forms of motorsports and who's in all kinds of halls of fame. I told Herb I'd never met him before today, and it's my honor, Herb. And I wanted to do the research. I wanted to be accurate with what I said when I came up here today. And I'm mad at Herb because he took me 20 extra minutes to research half of the accomplishments that he had achieved in his life, with 40 years with GM, director of the motorsports there. To count the halls of fame that he's in, I'm not sure I have enough fingers. 25 NASCAR Manufacturers Cup championships, Triple Crown, winning the Indy 500, which you did, in case you didn't know. I read 12 times, and it's on the internet, so it has to be true, Herb. They won the Daytona 500 and the 24-hour Le Mans in the same year. That is the Triple Crown, and that's almost unobtainable. And then from the time as a young man working around Bill Grumpy Jenkins and put him in a time machine 20 years forward, helping Pro Stock as it looks today evolve into the 500 cubic inch class, Herb has changed the face of motorsports. And to have him out here to talk about our Ed, pretty cool deal. Take it away, Herb.
Thanks, Jack. Does this work?
Yes, it does.
I'm envious of the camaraderie enjoyed by racers and hot rodders in Southern California. And I can tell you it's in direct contrast to the southeastern part of this country, where getting beyond NASCAR is pretty tough. And the audience that's here today really is what makes this happen. Enthusiasts at every level, racers, wives, kids, grandkids. Ed Pink belongs in the pantheon of great engine builders. In 2024, there was a Hall of Fame of engine builders created, and Ed Pink was in the inaugural class. And it's just really cool that he knew this before he died. In retirement, as a competitor, you get to know your competitors as friends. And for me, in the past 5-10 years, it's been a great trip. And sitting at the SEMA Hall of Fame luncheon with Ed and Sylvia, others, Don Prudhomme, Carroll Shelby, it just it gives me goose pimples to think of everything these folks represent and what they've accomplished. As a 16-year-old kid, Ed drifted into Lou Baney's shop, and I heard the word gopher used, but I can't ever imagine Ed being seen as a gopher. But as a mechanic, a couple of things happened at that time in his life. He learned that he had a thirst for knowledge. He also learned that he was adapting forever to continuous learning. And as you get older, adapting to change and continuous learning are what propel you to the next day, the next level. He mentored under some really cool guys. Sonny Meyer, Chiki Hiroshima. You know, these are guys that won the Indy 500 more times than you can count. I think all of us, as we get into the business, Jack talked about his attraction to the business, seeing the trucks and meeting the people. I think at every level, the first thing that attracts us is the sound of the engine. And some of us go and become drivers or, manufacturers and mechanics and other things. But the engine guys are really the heart of the business. And Ed became a master engine builder. Another friend of his, contemporary, was Jack Roush. And like Ed, Jack has his fingers in every aspect of the business. Owner, mechanic, aftermarket parts manufacturer, specialty vehicles, builds race cars. But I can tell you, in watching Jack at the racetrack, his happiest time was when he was able to get away, stick his head under the hood, pull out a screwdriver, and adjust the carburetor. And I see Ed Pink in the same light. Despite everything he had going, the touch, the feel, the sound of that engine is what made him special. The automobile manufacturers build engines for cost, efficiency, reliability, and of course, mandated by government specifications. And during my career, racing was a word you didn't mention in General Motors. I basically operated in a clandestine environment laden with mystery, and a lot of stuff went out the back door. I didn't have anything to do with that, but my part of it, I was always very good about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And the role of what someone like myself does in the racing world is not well known. For obvious reasons, we keep a pretty low profile, particularly in GM, where you weren't supposed to be doing what you were doing. And over time, when I leave the racetrack, I'd feel like a hunk of raw meat because everybody wanted something. From the time I walked into the pit area, the garage area, everybody, I want that same head Junior's got. What are you doing giving Rick Hendrick that part? I need that. And so I could make myself pretty scarce, and I actually came across the name Stealth. And most of you know the guy that coined that expression name for me was Bill Yeager. And it was a great observation by Bill. The reason I'm telling this story about the automobile manufacturers is that we became very dependent upon the speed merchants to develop the racing engines for us. And Smoking Unique, Bill Jenkins, Ed Pink, Keith Black, Jack Roush, these guys are fearless. I mean, they're calm, cool collectors, but they're fearless when it comes to developing something. And they apply integrity, they apply value. Their attention to detail is unprecedented. And most of all, they're innovators. I mean, they really, truly innovate. And they operate in an environment completely contrasting to a corporate environment. And that's where the goodness comes out of their work. And along the way, they pioneer heavy-duty parts, aftermarket parts that improve our basic engines. And if you go back to the days of Vic Edelbrock and Ed Iskandarian, Fred Offenhauser, these are the guys that created SEMA, the Special Equipment Marketing or Manufacturing Association at the time. And that, coupled with our basic engines, is what makes the process work. And these guys just take their unique talent and take every theory about the internal combustion engine and make it better. Smoking Unique was most closely identified with Chevrolet, and Ed Pink is probably more closely identified with Ford. And I think that the engine mentioned today multiple times, the Ford 4Camera, is his masterpiece for the Blue Oval. Ed Pink was a cog in the wheel beyond the Edelbrocks and the other names I mentioned in building the SEMA industry. At the SEMA Hall of Fame luncheon, during his acceptance speech into the Hall of Fame, Ed was asked a question about what advice he'd give to the builders and the young people getting in the business today. And he said, first of all, you got to have a plan. And as Yogi says, if you don't have a plan, you might end up somewhere else. He said, you got to be honest. You have to respect the customer. And you have to do the right thing for the people. And you have to give 110%. And those are the exact words that Ed used when he was inducted in the SEMA Hall of Fame. And he says, if you do all of that, your phone will always ring on Monday. My closest association with Ed would be with the Indy Racing League. GM Racing was building a Oldsmobile Aurora V8 engine for the IRL, and Ed and Frank Hontowitz were managing the Nissan Infinity program. And at the time I learned of the financial straits that Ed and Frank were working under, I gained enormous respect for what they were doing. Compared to the resources we had within GM at the time, it was only through Ed's efforts that engine got built. As a footnote, this morning I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about the Mary Barra, the chairman of GM, making a comment that they're reducing their focus on EVs and reverting more back to gasoline engines. Now here's a company that for the past, 7 or 8 years has said we will be all electric by 2035. Well, there's something in that comment that triggered a thought about Ed Pink. Again, the OEM industry is dependent upon the Ed Pinks of the world to do the work that we really aren't that talented in doing in the first place. And when the idea of electrification first came along, it was seen as from gasoline engines to electric power. And the customers didn't really buy into that too much, and the idea of hybrid technology came along. And in fact, hybrids became the bridge between going from gasoline to electricity. And the hybrids involved in racing today at every level are the most authentic validation for an advanced proving ground as to why an automobile manufacturer should be involved in racing. And today, if you look on a global perspective, the OEMs are involved at a level I never dreamed about during my time. In 2026, General Motors will be involved. We'll have a global footprint in every major racing series: NASCAR, drag racing, IndyCar, sports car, off-road, and Formula One. Now, how does this relate to Ed Pink? He relates to Ed Pink because all the Gen Z and Alpha generation are going to have things to work on, things to do. And all they have to do is look at the legacy, the principles, the integrity of Ed Pink, and realize what a bright future they can have in the business that we all love. So Sylvia, thank you. Nancy, thank you. And Jack, I appreciate the research you did. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
I heard Herb mention, and you know, drag racers never ask for anything free, right, Herb? Getting beat up about people wanting free stuff. Herb, I want you to know, make sure he's focused. Can you hear me out there, Herb? I don't want anything. But that 572 crate engine on pump gas, the 620 horse one, I can give you my home address later if you can call and make an arrangement. And then I'll never ask for anything again. Last speaker. And no pressure, right, Don? Gentleman they called a snake, made his mark on drag racing, oh gosh, going on tour with, anybody remember the name of the guy he went on tour with in 1960? Say it again, Bob. Tommy Ivo. Don Garlitz is the world's most successful, Don Prudhomme is the world's most successful. Hold on a minute. You think either one of them would be offended if you interpose the other's last name on there? Seriously? Garlitz, Prudhomme, they're both at the top of the food chain. But the world's most successful tire wiper, a car painter from Van Nuys that said, I think I can do this. Bought Ivo's little single engine Buick, ran it at San Fernando Dragway, and I got to tell you, during the COVID shutdown, I didn't have a lot to do, so I dug in and researched. And before Drag News came out in March of 1955, the only way to find out about drag racing, aside from local newspapers, which was sparse and inaccurate, would have been Hot Rod Magazine, which was 3 months later and sporadic at best. But boy, when Drag News came out, there were 5 Southern California tracks it covered, and then it started expanding. And it was awesome to go back in history to 1961 and start reading about Don Prudhomme wins his first race. And then he transitions to this little front engine top fuel car called the Greer Black and Prudhomme car. And Don Prudhomme wins the March meet. And then you just keep fast forwarding. Don Prudhomme wins this or that. And then he switched to funny car, but he still drove a top fuel car. So he had somebody else drive his funny car while he drove his top fuel car, but funny car looked better, so we stayed in funny car. And Don Prudhomme won everything in the mid-'70s. I'm going to tell you, Ed McCulloch was as tough as they come. Barry Setzer car. Anybody remember who drove that thing in the early 70s? Patty Foster. Man, was that car tough in the day. Don Schumacher, tough as it come. Gene Snow, unbelievable. Don't let anybody tell you that back in that day, there weren't a dozen or more deadly competitive funny cars, and nobody won more than Don Prudhomme. When that Army car rolled in there, I don't even know why the hell the other cars went through tech inspection, Don. It was unbelievable. But anyway, Don, if you want to head up here, and I think it's a fitting way to close out a tribute to our friend, and I've already learned so many things, and to see the smile on your guys' face, this is the entire purpose of a celebration of life, to paint a picture about a person who made a difference to a whole lot of ours. If you haven't heard of my friend here, his first name's Don, and his last name is Prudhomme.
Yeah, that's cool, Jack. Man, having Herb Fischel here is a big deal, you know. This guy doesn't go out of the house. And for him to come here and honor Ed Pink, I think it's really special. And man, I had some great, great days with Ed Pink and Lou Baney. Man, they were hooked at the hip. They were funny as hell too. And when I first started driving for the two of them, went up to Baney's house. He lived way up on the hill, and Pink was down below. And Ed would say, "Are Baney would say, you know the best thing I like about living here? When I flush my toilet, it runs right down in front of Pink's house. I always loved that. And I remember Sylvia, you worked at the Playboy Club. Weren't you a playmate or something, babe? How about that, guys? See, I remember that stuff, huh? We had great times.
So things we've learned today is Ed Pink picked cactus out of the ace's butt, and Sylvia worked at the Playboy Club.
Not mine, no. No, I was part of the motorcycle riding thing too, but no, Ed, I was a Keith Black guy when I first started. Keith Black, I was driving the Black Prudhomme car, they called it, and we did very, very well, especially out here in Long Beach, Lions, which was our track. But as time went on, Pink was, excuse me, I got all these. Keith Black was more into manufacturing engines, and Pink was on top of building them, and especially the 426. So I lived out in Van Nuys, and Pink's shop was in Van Nuys, so it was a perfect marriage. And I moved my stuff out there, and we worked on Raymer Street in the back of his shop, Pink's shop, and the Blue Max, the baddest ass hot rods going had Ed Pink engines in them. And so Ed Pink taught Bob Brandt and myself a whole lot about running the 426. And they were cast iron engines, but when I look back at my career, if it wasn't for Pink, I don't think, and Baney, I don't think I'd accomplish what I did, because I was fortunate to surround myself with those guys. But one thing that always pissed the mongoose off is that Pink fired the mongoose and hired me to drive the first Cammer Ford. And they had that Cammer was running at Lions. I'd see it out there. It was okay. You know, it was all right at the time, but they built a new car. And the new car had the Ford aluminum heads on it, and Pink was the only guy that really knew how to run an aluminum head on an engine like that. And he had the heads coated inside, and he was just a brain of a guy. But that car, we won our first national event with it in Bristol, Tennessee. Won the Nationals and beat Pete Robinson, which was running a Cammer Ford. And it was lovely times, you know. I look back at that guy, you know, what was so amazing about him is the energy he had. You know, God bless Keith Black, but he couldn't hold candlelight to Pink as far as get up and go. And we needed, Bob and I needed someone that would really look after the engine. I mean, really work with us. And Pink was that guy, you know, and it was just a perfect marriage. And I don't know, man, looking back on my career, he was just a huge part of it. I miss him. We had fun, which was unheard of nowadays compared to how it was back then with Baney and Pink. They were the best times ever. And the Mongoose, I look at all these great pictures on the wall here of all these things that Ed has done. And another thing I wasn't really aware of at the time was how sharp, all I cared about was drag racing, but how sharp Ed was with other engines. His experience at Bonneville in the 40s, hell, I didn't even know he did that, didn't I? I didn't pay attention to it because, once again, I just cared about drag racing. But, man, he was so deep about any little problem with the car. And so, once again, he treated me, I don't say like a son, but a brother, I guess. You know, we were all that way. We were just so close. And thank God for Lou Baney. Thank God for Ed Pink. And they really made my career, as far as I'm concerned. Outside of that, I don't have a lot more to talk about, man. You know, I mean, it was the greatest time ever. I mean, how do where do you go from there? You know, I just had the greatest ride of my life, drag racing with those guys. It was the best. That's all I got. Later.
before we started, I was chatting with Sylvie, and I said, I remember 4 years ago at the Peterson Museum, and it was celebrating the 100th birthday of Ed Iskandarian, and they had a panelist up there, group of 5 or 6 speakers there. And I'm listening, I'm just fascinated with all those telling the stories. And this one guy talks about when he was 13 years old, he would get on his bicycle, pedal over to Iski's shop just to see if he could learn something. And Sylvie says, no, that was Ed. I said, right. And I'm glad you heard the story when I did too, because when I heard a then 90-year-old man say that he had this thirst for knowledge so much so that as a teenager, he was pedaling over to this guy's shop to see if he could find out anything. And the guy whose shop he pedaled over was sitting 2 chairs down from at 104 years old. I don't know if we're all going to be blessed enough to live to 94, but I hope we can pack half as much into our lives as Mr. Pink did. I just think it's a great tribute to an amazing person, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. Have we got news yet on great-grandbaby number 4? Any second now. I thought maybe Jack or Jackie. I don't know if you said it's going to be a girl. Those are both available. Herb, I will get you the home address for that 572 crate motor on pump gas that makes 620 horsepower. Thank you guys so much for making this special for the Pink family, which is exactly what a celebration of life should be. It's to celebrate a life that mattered. And I think today shows he still matters. Thank each and every one of you, and feel free to stay around, folks. You can go back and film a short video for the family. You guys can feel free to tour the museum. Thank you to Lions Automobilia, and again, I appreciate everybody.